My wife Connie just got back from a weekend away with her lover. It started 6 months ago. At first, she made up legends about going to spend time with her mother. But in the last few months, she just left without any explanation. I was too trusting, so for a long time I couldn't figure out what was going on. Calvin Bostic had been a friend of my wife's before we met her. After living together for a few years, he decided to join the Air Force and left Connie behind. I picked her up, married her, and we had 2 children. Life was wonderful for 23 years, and then it stopped being wonderful. Our son Robert got a job at the post office in Baltimore, and our daughter Dawn got married and moved to Allentown. I expected life to be better when we became empty nesters, but I was wrong. I work for my Uncle Simon driving a gravel truck. It's hard work, but it pays well. We drive 2 late model cars and have no credit card bills. We planned to make repairs to the house even though it was underwater. When problems started at home, I decided to do a little investigating. Connie's mother lived in Pottsville, and Connie was visiting Calvin in Frackville. Frackville isn't that big, so I had no trouble finding his house. It was a small apartment in the old part of town. I stopped and talked to my mother-in-law and found out that Connie hadn't visited him in weeks, or if she had, it was only for an hour or so. "When were you going to tell me about your weekend with Calvin?" Connie set down her overnight bag and sank down on the couch. I couldn't tell if she was relieved or annoyed. "Calvin quit the Air Force last March and rented a house in Frackville. He got my phone number from his sister, and we'd get together to reminisce about old times." "All weekend?" "Doug, Calvin and I were lovers long before we were married. We have a connection. There's a compatibility and intimacy that you and I never had. Being with him just feels natural." "You mean you're soulmates?" "Yes. I know it's a cliché, but it's true." "What about us? In 23 years, what kind of relationship have we had?" "I'm sorry, Doug. We all have to make choices in life. When you can't get what you want, you have to choose the alternative. When Calvin left, you became my alternative." 23 years and 2 kids, and I was just the alternative? Damn it, Doug. Don't be so dramatic. I've been a good wife and a good mother. Now I want some time to myself. Things went quiet for a few moments. "Does he know you're married?" "Yes, and he realizes. He knows he was wrong to leave, and he regrets it. He realizes that marrying you is what I should have done, and he forgives me for it." "What? He forgives you for marrying me? Are you out of your mind?" "Doug, calm down. Why are you so upset?" "I'm just a little curious, Connie. Why didn't you just move in with him?" "He's in some legal trouble right now. His ex-wife is suing for divorce and is demanding 48% of his Air Force retirement pay. He thinks it's best if our relationship stays in the shadows." "Is he working?" "He's still in transition. There aren't many ground equipment specialists in the area, and he wants to stay here." "So, Connie, what are your plans?" "I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it anymore." I watched my wife pack her overnight bag and retire to the bedroom. I spent the night in the living room, settling into an armchair. Monday morning, after Connie left for work, I finalized all of my business. I started with the banking and insurance stuff. Closing the accounts and canceling the policies gave me a good boost to get out of bankruptcy. I had a $30,000 home improvement loan pre-approved. My 57-year-old 57 Chevy brought me almost $20,000. I found another use for my Harley Fat Boy. I paid the fine and cashed in my IRA. There were 4 CDs in the safety deposit box. Unfortunately, Uncle Simon didn't have a retirement plan I could count on. I was planning an unexpected 6-month cruise for our 25th wedding anniversary. Connie didn't know I'd been contributing to it for 6 years. That was another $30,000 in the piggy bank. I had no trouble finding a buyer for my Snap-on tools. I cashed in my Krugerrands. The Riverside apartment complex looked the same as it had 25 years ago. Hector Cordetti, on the other hand, looked different. Hector and I grew up together. His mother was Dominican and his father was Italian. He was bigger, hairier, and uglier than I remembered him. It was a great reunion. We finished 6 mugs each, and I gave him the picture and all the information I had on Calvin Bostic. His eyes lit up when I put the title and the keys to the fat man in front of him. "Doug, this is too much. Don't bribe me for a favor. We know each other too well. I can do what you want for nothing. That's not the point. I'm leaving town and I need to find a home for him. You were the first person I thought of. Use him. Take care of him. And if you still have him when I get back, you can give him back to me. In the meantime, if you need money or anything, just sell the damn thing. Make your life easier. Okay. So I got a little rough on this guy and put him in the hospital. That's it? What if he doesn't get the message? I'd say wait a couple months, and if he's still communicating with Connie, pay him another visit. After 2 trips to the trauma center, he should get the point. That arrogant son of a bitch really needs an attitude adjustment. When do you want to do it? Wait about 2 weeks. And then what? I'll be gone for a long time. No phone, no mail, no contacts. Maybe I'll send you a card for Christmas. It was a good thing we finished our beers, or I would have stayed out all night. When I arrived, Connie wasn't home. I planned to travel light because I'd be tight in the future. Connie had fulfilled her long-time wish, and I was going to fulfill mine as well. A Nordic Tug 26. All people have dreams or aspirations. Mine was pretty simple, but still unattainable. There was no way in hell I could convince her to live on a yacht. Now I didn't have to worry about that. The hardest part was finding a yacht that I could afford to buy and still live on. The internet is a great place to shop. My son Robert had just gotten home from work when I arrived. He looked surprised to see me, and I assumed he hadn't talked to his mother lately. I briefly told him about the situation, trying not to praise Connie, but telling him everything nonetheless. He wasn't happy, of course, but he understood. Robert was going to keep a few things for me while I was traveling, like my birth certificate and DD 214. He also agreed to act as a discreet contact if I needed anything. I gave him the title to the truck and told him where to pick it up in Annapolis. He was still single, but he had a steady girlfriend who he said had marriage potential. I spent the night there, and in the morning we both left at the same time. I thought it was funny that my phone was on the whole time, but I never waited for a call from my wife. An hour later, I had breakfast in Annapolis and then headed to the marina. We spent the morning taking care of business. After lunch, I went through a complete inspection of all operational and safety systems. I was glad I had gotten my BS&S Coast Guard certification earlier. With the help of the Yanmar service manual and the service technician at the marina, I was able to gather an assortment of spare parts and additional tools that I might need. I had no intentions of becoming a skilled marine mechanic. I just wanted to know enough to get to the nearest service center if needed. I purchased a complete set of ICW charts as well as lists of all the marinas on the East Coast and Gulf Coast. 1 set for my Kindle and 1 set in a spiral-bound book. The girls in the marina office were more than happy to help me outfit my new kitchen and pantry. One small indulgence I allowed myself was to purchase a small set of solar panels and a full set of LCD lights for the boat. I felt I could work on this in my spare time on my free days. Everything went smoothly. In the evening, Robert's girlfriend took him to the marina. I gave them a tour of the tugboat and we had dinner together. He drove the truck home. I was officially free. Early the next morning, I quietly left the marina with 75 gallons of fuel and 50 gallons of water. I had no plan or purpose. I had enough money to last me a year if I didn't spend it on fuel. Any serious mechanical problems would likely have broken me. I had no choice but to go forward with my fingers crossed. For the next 2 weeks, I familiarized myself with my new toy. I figured out how to achieve optimal fuel consumption. I became familiar with the instruments and electronics. Most marinas and waterfront restaurants had free Wi-Fi. I downloaded a ton of books onto my Kindle and took a few more Coast Guard courses, including safety and weather courses. I made a note to myself to get on board internet in the future. I wasn't going anywhere in particular, but I found myself gradually making my way south. The time was approaching when I was to begin my journey. I was a little anxious, but also a little cautious. I had no experience, but there was nothing to lose. Let's go. I quickly discovered that eating at the marina or waterfront establishments would cut my expenses a lot. I would have to learn some of the tricks and techniques for cooking on board. I downloaded a few more books. At one point in the trip, there were problems with limited fuel supply. I bought a collapsible fuel bladder in case I needed it. I restocked the pantry. I connected my small solar panel to a small battery from the lawnmower. It provided LCD lighting throughout the boat and even gave me a small charging station for my phone and Kindle. I was leaving the Honga River, heading towards Bloodworth Island, when I noticed a young girl waving her arms frantically. She was standing on the back of a large white yacht that appeared to have run aground in the bush. Only the back half of the yacht was visible in the fading daylight. As I got closer, I noticed that it was a large Chris-Craft yacht. Except for the awkward position, she appeared to be in pristine condition. There were no running lights on her, no signs of life except for a girl waving her arms. I forgot about her for the time being, as I was more interested in the yacht. "Hi, can you help me?" She wasn't as young as I first thought. She was probably in her early 20s and dressed in a cocktail dress. "Do you want me to radio you or call hell?" "Hell no! Whatever you do, don't call anyone." "Can I take you somewhere?" By this time, the tug had come aboard the Chris Craft. I turned off the motor and tied up. "Yeah, in a minute, but there's something I have to do first." "Are you out of fuel?" "Maybe. I don't know. It just stopped driving and disappeared behind the trees." "Where were you headed?" "Nowhere in particular. Why all the questions?" "Just curious. What do you need to do?" "Do you have any gasoline?" "Gasoline won't do you any good. It runs on diesel fuel." "I know. So do you have some or not?" I grabbed a 2-gallon canister of unleaded gasoline from the back pantry and handed it to her over the rail. She disappeared to the front of the boat and returned a few seconds later, pouring gasoline as she went. I guessed what she was going to do, so I discreetly loosened the tether rope. She handed me the empty canister as well as the rocket launcher from the helm. Holding onto the coupling, she climbed over the rail and jumped onto the tug. "Permission to come aboard, sir?" I couldn't keep from smiling at the grim humor. As I took off the line and started the engine, she opened the rocket launcher. I was backing away from the tug and she loaded it and fired it right into the back of the boat. Amazingly, it hit right on target the first time. There was no big explosion. It was a sort of slow, spreading fire from stern to bow. We were about 100 feet away from her when she was completely engulfed in flames. A short time later, there were 2 muffled explosions followed by heavy smoke. By then, it was nightfall and it was hard to see anything. "Hi, my name is Sky. What's yours?" 10 minutes later, after a brief introductory conversation, my new friend was sound asleep. While I was chatting, she dozed off. That was okay because I had to concentrate a bit, trying to get back on the main channel. I had no idea what was going on, but I felt like I needed to increase the distance between us and the smoking hulk that was once a pristine cabin cruiser. Night cruises are very relaxing, although you have to pay more attention to what you're doing. I was a bit on edge at the time due to circumstances, so the quiet time was relaxing, but not sleep-inducing. I managed to throw a light blanket over my guest without waking her up. She was not properly dressed. When the sun was already up, I found a nice quiet place to pull off the canal. Barely had time to brew some coffee when my guest poked her head out the sunroof. "Good morning, Doug. Sorry I dozed off last night. The coffee smells great." "Where the hell are we? Where's the bathroom?" She seemed to like to chat. I tossed her a t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants. Under the circumstances, it was the best I could do. 5 minutes later, we were both comfortably ensconced on the deck with a steaming brew. The t-shirt was a little big for her, but the overly long pants seemed to fit her thighs quite well. "Well, Miss Sky, would you mind telling me what the hell is going on, or is it none of my business?" "Actually, it's Mrs. Daniel Cordell. I've only been married for 6 weeks, and already it feels like it's over." "I understand that the boat you left behind belonged to your husband?" "Yes. It was a splendid sight, wasn't it?" "I suppose you had good reasons for acting as you did?" "Absolutely." The traffic on the canal was slow, but it was nice to just sit quietly and watch the ships go by. I filled both mugs, and we sat for a few more minutes without saying anything. I wanted to know more, but I didn't want to seem too curious. I decided to let things unravel on their own. "Doug, do you mind if I call my dad? I don't want him to worry about me." "No problem. I've got some things to do. Take your time." Of course, most of the things I had to do were a little superficial. I figured out exactly where we were and updated the fuel and water logs. Another 20 minutes passed when my uninvited guest looked up. "Doug, if you're not too busy, my father would like to talk to you. Is that okay with you?" She handed me the cell phone and went back down underground. Hi. Pretty slick start, I thought. Mr. Martin, my name is Franklin Graves. I am, of course, Sky's father. My daughter is in a bit of a jam, and I need to ask you for a small favor. Go ahead. Would you mind keeping my little girl aboard for a few days until I get some things sorted out? Of course, I will see to it that you are adequately compensated for the inconvenience. I'm afraid I have a very small boat, Mr. Graves. I don't think she will be very comfortable. I don't want her to be comfortable. I want her to be safe. Safe? You don't even know me. How can you leave your daughter with a stranger? It's the best alternative I have. And besides, it's her idea, not mine. I'm sorry, it's not going to work out. I'll take her to Yorktown. Arrange to have her picked up there. I'll call you back tonight. Let me talk to Sky again, please. I spent the next hour trying to figure out why the name Franklin Graves sounded familiar, while my stowaway was figuring out how to use the compact shower. Of course, she was using too much water. I'll have to talk to her about that. I was pondering why she was taking so long to mess around when she yelled out to me, "Doug, brunch is ready!" I wasn't expecting anything, so I was pleasantly surprised to see a plate of hot scrambled eggs with Spam. I was amazed that she navigated the galley so easily. It was all very tasty. As we ate, we hardly talked about anything. After quickly cleaning up after ourselves, we returned to the cockpit and sat down again with a fresh cup of coffee. Why did you say no to my father, Doug? Not many people say no to my father. Your father doesn't know me, and I don't know you. I was uncomfortable with what he was offering. I'd rather just drop you off somewhere than get involved in something that doesn't concern me. My father said the same thing, but I answered him that I felt safe with you and would prefer to stay with you if possible. Why did you say that? I'm a good judge of character. Good. Tell me about your husband. Daniel was my father's choice. It was a mistake. I told my father it was a mistake and he wouldn't listen to me. Now I'm in a predicament and the only way out is to ask my father for help. Doug, I make a lot of mistakes. I don't want to go back to my father. It's not fair to him. He tried his best to raise me to be responsible, and I keep letting him down. I need help, but now I also have to get out of this stupid situation. I pulled all the lines and went to the helm. 5 minutes later, we were leisurely heading south. I went back into the channel and relaxed a bit, while Sky sat quietly in the cockpit. 2 hours later, I heard her phone ring again. She held it out to me. Okay, Mr. Martin, I have no reason not to trust you with my daughter anymore. It took a couple hours, but you checked yourself out very well. I'm sorry about your marital problems, but you seem to be handling them well. Will you be able to be in Yorktown tomorrow? It took a moment to realize what he was saying. I'm neither stupid nor slow, but I'm a little cautious. Mr. Martin, are you here, Mr. Martin? Yes, I'm still here. I just need some time to think things over. Take your time. Do you think you can be in Yorktown tomorrow? If so, dock at Wormley Creek Marina. I'll have someone meet you there. If someone will meet us there, why can't she just leave with him? I don't quite understand. Mr. Martin, I believe you are planning a trip down the coast. I don't want to interfere with your trip, but I'd like you to take Sky with you for a week or so. Think of it as an interesting diversion. Mr. Graves, I'm not prepared to host, and your daughter has no clothes or personal items for such a trip. We'll take care of that tomorrow. Don't worry about that. May I speak to my daughter? It was almost noon when we docked at the Wormley Creek Marina. Waiting for our arrival were a middle-aged man in a suit and a woman in her 20s dressed in athletic clothes. Sky waved to them as we disembarked. It was obvious she knew the woman well. We joined them at a table outside overlooking the docks. Mr. Graves, my name is Marshall, and this is Miss Templeton. We'll try to make our meeting as brief as possible. Why? I have all the time in the world. You needn't hurry on my account. Can I get a cold beer? I noticed Sky kind of grinned when I said that. He opened his briefcase that was on the chair next to him and pulled out some manila folders. I groaned slightly when I saw them, and he noticed. I'm sorry, Mr. Graves, just some minor formalities.
I'm going to have to interrupt you briefly, announced Miss Templeton. Sky and I have a few things to sort out. We'll be back in about an hour. Have fun. Have lunch. We'll see you soon. Take your time. Marshall seemed a little discouraged by her levity, but I found it refreshing.
Over the next 30 minutes, Marshall talked about a hell of a lot of nonsense. New cell phones, special credit cards, and a small wad of cash. I hesitated a little when he presented the medical power of attorney forms. Since she would only be with me for a week or so, I didn't see the need for it. He emphasized that it was just a precautionary measure and nothing to worry about. Things had gotten pretty deep and I was starting to worry. Sighing, I insisted on another beer and lunch. He agreed. I found it very odd that I didn't get any backstory or information about the situation other than what I already knew. Skye was an unhappy newlywed who had an argument with her husband and decided to run away from home. In doing so, she had safely destroyed a $500,000 yacht and thought nothing of it. Now her daddy wanted me to babysit her, seemingly indefinitely. I knew nothing about the girl except that she was a spoiled brat. Only a fool would even think that. Marshall and I had finished lunch and had a few more beers when the girls came back. They had armfuls of clothes that I assumed were appropriate, and they quickly began folding them in the cabin. This is when things got serious. In addition to an unlimited number of credit cards, Marshall provided the amount her father was willing to pay for my services and even set up a special bank account in my name. The deposit would be made monthly while I was with her. What the hell happened to a week or so? Overnight, someone, not me, decided overnight that this arrangement was going to be long-term and didn't even consider it important enough to discuss with me. Naturally, I got angry. Before I could vent my anger, Marshall showed me a copy of the first bank deposit. The amount was staggering, to say the least. As angry as I was, I couldn't refuse. "Mr. Marshall, I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but can you tell me what term we're talking about?" He only shrugged his shoulders. Shortly thereafter, Marshall and Miss Templeton left. I thought it was funny when Marshall slid me the bill for lunch in the bar. Hell, I had so much money now that I didn't care. I got ready to set sail and looked at my new charge. "Lucy, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do." She giggled at my bad Daisy Arnaz accent. We left the marina and headed south to the canal, found a nice quiet cove and set up there for the rest of the day. None of us were hungry, so we just snacked and sipped beer. Skye's family got rich in real estate. Very old money, and there was a lot of it. Her husband Daniel was from new money, mostly Wall Street. She didn't know too much about what his family did, but she knew his family was richer than her father. She didn't know him that well, and it was almost a marriage of convenience. I looked at her cheerfully when she said that, and she groaned in response. Skye had only been married for 6 weeks when her husband decided it would be a nice gesture to share his wife with a few fraternity brothers. He figured Chris Crafts would be a good place for his party. But things didn't go as well as he planned. Her father sought an annulment of the marriage. She learned from Miss Templeton that Daniel was furious. Not only had she embarrassed him in front of his fraternity brothers, but the yacht was the pride of the family, and he had lost it. The family was angry at Daniel, and his friends laughed at him. He had publicly vowed revenge at any cost, and that was why her father was so concerned. There was no telling what kind of revenge he envisioned, but her father didn't want to take any chances. It was getting a little crowded on the tugboat. A new body and a whole bunch of new clothes made it hard to fit everything she needed. What had once been a comfortable place to live was now less comfortable. Skye had already had some experience with boating as a child, so she wasn't completely useless. Together we found the easiest and best way to do everything we needed to do. I was amazed at how well we worked together. She readily took on the tasks associated with keeping the tug clean and organized, while I focused on the mechanical and operational issues. She enjoyed meal planning and cooking. We established a regular shopping and laundry schedule at our gas stations. Normally, I wouldn't spend money on laundry, but this was no longer normal, so we went for it. We didn't drive many miles, but we were making good time and enjoying the ride. I was living in the moment and savoring it. All thoughts of previous problems were rapidly fading away. And then I made the mistake of calling my son. "Robert, it's Dad. I just thought I'd update you on my condition and see how things are going at home." "About time. It's been almost 3 months. What the hell have you been doing?" "Just traveling and napping. I've got everything perfect. What's going on in Pennsylvania?" For starters, Mom's pissed. You cleaned everything up before you left and set it up pretty good. She called here several times and finally stopped when I convinced her we had no idea where you were. She does, however, know about the boat. Some papers and documents were accidentally mailed to the old address, and she quickly matched 2 and 2. It was bound to come up sooner or later. What is she doing with it? I don't know. She and the bank have been sorting it out for a while. Seems like between the mortgage and the home improvement loan, there's no way she can keep up with the payments. Hell, she can't even afford to pay the utility bills. What's she going to do? She got a job at Target, but it doesn't pay much and it's not even 40 hours. She's been selling off stuff to make ends meet. Of course, your stuff was the first to go. I should have grabbed those Snap-on tools, but I was too late. I figured her new boyfriend would be helping her out. That's a joke. As far as I can tell, even with his pension, he doesn't have enough to live on, let alone her. Speaking of good old Calvin, he's pretty pissed at you. To be honest, I think he's trying to find you. Mom mentioned the word retribution. Oh, shit. I didn't think of that. He's supposed to be remorseful, not retaliating. If you're referring to the visit Hector paid him, I guess things didn't work out the way you planned. Did you talk to Hector? No, what the hell are you talking about? Hector was just going to mess with him a little. I'm sorry, Dad, but that's not how it ended up. Apparently Calvin was a black belt in some kind of martial arts. I guess Hector didn't know that, and Calvin ended up beating the crap out of him. Hector was lucky to get out of there in one piece. Well, I didn't plan for that to happen. Anyway, that's why Calvin's trying to find you. According to Mom, he's mad as hell, and he's going to make you pay dearly. I think he's trying to track your cell phone. I keep it turned off most of the time. Thanks for the update. I'll get back to you in about 2 weeks. In the meantime, don't worry about me. I'm fine. I interrupted the call and saw Sky sitting up and smiling at me. That's when I realized I hadn't mentioned to my son that I had a shipmate. Gee, Doug, looks like there are 2 evil guys trying to track us down. Daniel, too? According to my father, Daniel has taken an extended leave of absence from work and is determined to track me down and make me pay for disrespecting him and his family. What does his family have to do with this? Daniel believes that by destroying Cordell's yacht, I insulted both him and his family. He needs some kind of revenge to save face. My father is trying to find out the details, but Daniel has disappeared. Daniel is prone to violence? As far as I know, he's been arrested at least 3 times for assault, but his father dealt with all the complaints before it went to trial. I feel like someone just hung a target around our necks. Doug, I could use a cold beer and a hot pizza tonight. Are we close to any place? 10 minutes later, we were on our way. The pizza was good, but the beer sounded even better. After a few months of living in close quarters together, Sky and I had grown much closer. It was a platonic relationship, but we were both okay with that. A 15-year age difference can quiet many healthy sexual urges. Strangely, the issue was never discussed. We simply accepted our daily interactions as normal. We enjoyed an evening beer, but never indulged in excess. It was more like a father-daughter relationship. I don't think either of us thought it was anything more than that. I was uncomfortable with the realization that 2 men were trying to find us. Both of them seemed to have serious grievances, or at least they thought so. I was at a loss, but felt I had to do something about it. The first call I made was to Sky's ex-husband. The annulment of the marriage had taken place a month ago. Daniel, how are you doing? It's Doug, the guy who stole your wife. A rapid succession of swear words followed, then a short question. Where are you, you miserable son of a bitch? I'll find you sooner or later. Relax, Danny. I've decided it's time for us to meet. How soon can you get to Savannah? Tomorrow. Is that soon enough for you? I was thinking Saturday morning. That will give you a couple days to get ready. I'll call tomorrow and let you know the time and place. I'll be waiting. I didn't bother unsubscribing, just canceled the call. You're not going to meet him, are you? The man is crazy and dangerous. He's probably bringing weapons. Sky was seriously concerned, and I was touched. I'm working on it. I'm going to check on something now, and then I'll make another call. A quick internet search gave me the information I needed. Now all that was left was to finalize my plan. Finding out Calvin's cell phone number wasn't difficult. "Calvin, my friend, this is Doug Graves. I have a new pair of dancing shoes and I'm dying to try them out. Are you interested?" "You know very well I am. Where the hell are you? You won't be able to escape this time." "I'm not trying to escape. We need to talk. It sounds like you need an attitude adjustment and I'm just the person to do it. Your friend Hector tried that. And what came of it?" "Can you be in Savannah by Saturday morning?" "I'm already halfway there." "Good. Meet me at 10 o'clock at the food court at Fairway Mall. Come alone and, most importantly, wear a red MAGA cap." "What's with the stupid hat?" "That's the deal. You wear the cap and I show up. No cap and you'll never see me. If I'm going to kick ass, I want to make sure it's the right thing to do." "You're a funny man." "I'll be there. You better show yourself." Sky giggled like crazy when I ended the call. "You're a silly old man. You don't know anything about karate, do you? You're about to get a slap in the face." I just laughed and shrugged. We relaxed, watched the sunset, and drank beer. Life was good. I made one more call before we went to bed. "Danny, it's Doug. I just thought I'd call you to set up a meeting." "It's Daniel, you ass. Nobody calls me Danny. I'm approaching the Georgia border. Where will we meet?" "I'll meet you Friday at 10 a.m. in the food court of the Fairway Shopping Center. I'll be wearing a red MAGA cap and have my dancing shoes on." "Why do I care about your shoes?" "Because I'm going to kick your little ass." I didn't hear the rest because I turned my phone off. All I heard was Sky giggling again. She did giggle a lot. A few hours later, we were safely docked at the Freeport Marina. We did the usual maintenance and had a great crab cake dinner. The sky was a little ominous, so I was glad we made it to a safe harbor. By the time we got back to the boat, the squall was almost upon us. We quickly double-checked all the mooring lines and made sure everything was secured before locking up for the night. I still used the main berth, and Sky used one of the cots in the galley. A few hours later, a storm blew in. The lightning, thunder, and wind proved too much for my stowaway, and I found her squeezing her way onto my bed. Neither of us said anything. By morning, the storm had subsided, and Sky was still sleeping quietly next to me. I got up quietly, leaving her there. A half hour or so later, she came up to me for a fresh cup of coffee. No word had been said about sleeping in for the evening. Since it was Friday, we decided to go to the breakfast club for lunch. It was a short wait, but we managed to get a good seat by the TV at the end of the counter. It was about 10:30 when the local news channels carried a message. "There was a shooting at the Fairway Shopping Center this morning. An unknown male wearing a red MAGA hat was shot and killed in the mall's food court for no apparent reason. The gunman refused to drop his weapon, at which point he was shot by mall security officers. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities are trying to identify them and determine the motive for the confrontation." This was a serious news story, and I had to quickly pay our bills so we could leave the restaurant. Sky could hardly contain herself. "You conniving, dirty son of a bitch! You've been planning this whole time, haven't you?" She giggled again. "Of course I haven't. How could you think that?" We spent the rest of the day relaxing and finishing off all the beer we had. That night we slept together again, but nothing happened between us. Early the next morning, the tugboat headed south, and Sky was still asleep. In the afternoon, I decided to call Robert and see how things were at home. After a few minutes of friendly chatter, I had to ask the important question, "How's your mom doing?" "She's mad as hell. Nothing seems to be working out for her. She can't pay her bills and apparently hasn't seen her boyfriend in over a week. He told her he had some business to take care of and just left. She finally settled with the bank, and they are going to foreclose on the house. She also signed and returned the divorce agreement. She seemed pleased with it." "What divorce agreement? You didn't file for divorce?" "Hell no! Where and when would I have done that? I have no idea what you're talking about." "All I know is that a guy came to the house with all the papers and a check for $20,000. She signed the papers, took the check, and threw it out the door. She thought you had applied." Robert and I talked about other things for a few more minutes. He and his girlfriend were thinking about the Christmas wedding and wanted to know if I would be able to attend. I assured him that I would make every effort and asked him at the last minute to make it a plus. I didn't know how long I would be with Sky, but I wanted to back up just in case. Of course, I refused to answer any other questions prompted by that statement. I never answered the question about my wife's missing boyfriend. I interrupted the call just as Sky staggered up to the top floor. She really needed coffee. We spent 2 days in Jacksonville. Sky managed to find out that her father had orchestrated my divorce. When I asked her why he did it, she said because she asked him to do it herself. I had a hell of a lot of questions about the legality of it all, but I decided not to bring them up. I also had a lot of questions about why she did what she did. There was never anything romantic between us. I was extremely cautious and tried not to cross that line in any way. Before I knew it, she had me trapped in an old cliched conversation. Did I think she was beautiful? Did I think she was too young for me? Was I too old for her? Was I ashamed to be dating her? It went on and on. She seemed to really like me over the past couple months. Of course, I was completely infatuated with her, but I didn't even consider continuing the relationship because of the age difference. For some reason, we had completely avoided conversations of this nature before. Now, however, I felt awkward. That night, I slept in the galley. When she came up in the morning, I was already making coffee. She didn't look well rested. "Doug, I'm sorry I messed up so badly. I thought we were getting along pretty well, and I was hoping that if I pushed things a little, we could get a little closer. I guess I went a little overboard. I need to talk to your dad." "Oh, shit! You're going to leave me, aren't you?" "I tried, Doug. I really tried. Can't we figure out a way for me to stay?" "That's not the point, Sky. I don't want you to leave. I just don't know how I can keep living aboard with you without getting too involved. I like your company. I like being with you." "It's about age, isn't it?" I shrugged and nodded affirmatively. "We've already gotten farther than I feel comfortable with. I'm starting to feel like a dirty old man taking advantage of an innocent girl. I don't want to feel that way, and I don't want your father to look at me that way. Doug, why do you think my father agreed to hasten your divorce?" "I've been meaning to ask you that. Why he did it in the first place." "I kind of asked him if there was anything he could do to help. I thought it would be important to you. I didn't realize he actually did anything until you mentioned it. I was hoping you would feel less guilty about our relationship if the divorce went through. I think my father wants us to stay together." "Why? I'm too old for you. You want a young, virile, healthy guy, not an old, jaded man." "I think he's looking for a way out. I've been an undisciplined tomboy all my life. All I've done is cause my father grief. He feels responsible for me, but I think he'd rather pass the baton, so to speak, to someone else. He thought Daniel could tame me a little, but he was wrong. By the way, Daniel is his choice, not mine." "He's never even met me." Sky pulled English muffins out of the toaster. We sat for a few minutes watching the peanut butter melt in the hot corners. The sky was clear and the day promised to be beautiful. Everything around them was peaceful. "I never tried to tame you." It took only 10 minutes for Sky's father to dispel all my doubts about our relationship. He was enthusiastic about the fact that I'd even considered staying with her. Everything seemed to fall into place in a way that I hadn't even planned for. The tugboat continued south at a nice steady pace. A little more open water, which I liked, but the little catfish was handling it just fine. Sky and I had finally consummated our relationship in the biblical sense of the word. I was amazed at my ability to resist the onslaught. Thankfully, things leveled out a bit after 3 days, but she still wouldn't let me completely calm down. Robert told me that Connie found out about what had happened to Calvin and was devastated. Under the circumstances, she realized that the money she got from the divorce would not last long. Since the divorce was not yet final, she hoped to make some changes. Fortunately, she still didn't know where I was or how to contact me. My plan to leave worked out better than I had anticipated. Sky and I weren't in any rush to get anywhere, but we received a text message from her dad asking us to meet him in Fort Lauderdale the following Saturday. He even gave us the GPS coordinates. We had plenty of time, so we didn't need to rush. I tried to find clothes that I thought would be good enough to wear to meet Father Sky, and found that most of my old clothes no longer fit. It seems I had lost a fair amount of weight over the past few months. I wore shorts and swim trunks with an elastic waistband most of the time, so I didn't notice the difference. We made a quick stop in Delray Beach, and Sky was happy to pick out anything I might need. Of course, she bought a few new things for herself as well. We planned everything down to the last detail and arrived at our destination right on time. Lunch with Franklin Graves at the dock went much better than I expected. He was not only genuinely pleased to meet me, but also very grateful that I was able to establish a relationship with his daughter. All my worries turned out to be unfounded. Sky was surprisingly calm and stayed close to me. After lunch, he insisted we take a walk around the marina. The chatter was light and casual, but I got the feeling he had a specific destination in mind. Doug, what do you think of this? We were standing in front of a brand new Nordic Tug 44. Everything about it was perfect. He grinned like a cat as I looked it over from the dock. Sky held my hand as I made my way to the stern. Unlike my tugboat, this one had a name. I smiled and she squeezed my hand like crazy. We both stood looking at the old English script on the back of the boat. Alternative.